You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. It's time to see what's making the headlines with the CEO of Total Politics Group, Mark Wallace, and the Guardian columnist Zoe Williams. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. So let's take a look at what's on the front pages for you now. Well, the Mirror leads with the King's announcement that his cancer treatment is to be reduced in the new year. The Times reports that His Majesty's message was issued as part of a screening awareness initiative. The Express says the King has partially credited following doctors' orders for his good news. The Mail points out that the news will be especially welcome in the run-up to Christmas. The King's update on his health is also the main story for The Telegraph. While The Sun offers an affectionate pun, strong to reign over us. In other news, Sir Keir Starmer has written an opinion piece for The Guardian in which he suggests it would be irresponsible for doctors to strike next week in the midst of the emerging flu outbreak. As the possibility of an epidemic looms, the Eye reports special efforts are being made to make sure children are vaccinated. The Financial Times says the EU has indefinitely frozen more than £180 billion of Russian government's assets as leaders look to apply more pressure on Moscow to reach a peace deal with Ukraine. And on a lighter note, The Star has a photo of darts champion Luke Littler's unfortunate encounter with a wasp during an interview with Sky Sports. So he's giggling at that. That's unkind of you. Could have stung him.
I was just surprised.
when are the wasps going away? It's like December,
exactly,
right?
that was one element of my surprise.
Yeah, they shouldn't be around for Christmas, should they? As you can see, Mark Wallace and Zoe Williams join us to take us through the papers, starting with more serious fare, front page of The Guardian. Doctor strike during flu crisis beyond belief. This is a quote from the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer. He's written an opinion piece. Zoe?
I mean, it's not the Keir Starmer that we knew of old, who was always very pro-unions and always very, you know, he was a steward on many active strikes in his youth and early non-youth, and would have, I think, tried to resolve this a little bit more subtly and behind the scenes than going in all studs first in an opinion piece. It's just very surprising. I mean, it's actually not that surprising. But if you
is it studs first, though? Because we've had the Health Secretary saying that, you know, it's unreasonable now, almost offering the prospect of delaying the strike until after the Christmas period and this flu situation.
Realistically, I think the resident doctors have slightly shot themselves in the foot because obviously, when they went in with these 5 days of strike just before Christmas, they were mindful that that was going to be a huge statement, but they were ready to make it, and they were ready to make it for what they thought were justified reasons. What they didn't realise was that the winter crisis was going to arrive this far ahead of Christmas. And so, actually, what they were kind of planning for was a strike during an unprecedented Christmas crisis. And, you know, I can see both sides, really. I think they're probably having quite a lot of discussions about who blinks first. But they're certainly Wes Streeting, and evidently Keir Starmer decided a long time ago that they weren't going to compromise any more on this.
But you think Keir Starmer's being heavy-handed now?
It's not that I think he's being heavy-handed. It's that I think he's, A, following Wes Streeting rather than leading, and so it makes him look weak. B, he doesn't actually know. You can't tell what he believes. You know, he's not the person we thought he was, but he hasn't successfully made himself a different kind of person. And C, he doesn't really feel like he's got a grip on the situation. You know, it's like, frankly, beyond belief, there's something. It's almost like he's kind of arrived late to the dispute, and he's trying to wrestle control over it, and too late.
Mark?
Yeah, I confess I'm not convinced that the BMA is surprised by the nature of the crisis and the awkward timing of the strike. Yes, the flu is evidently worse than anticipated, but if four things are sure in life: death, taxes, Labour chancellors putting taxes up, and the NHS facing a winter crisis, because that's part of what winter is.
I thought flu was going to be one of your four things.
We know this is inevitably, right in the depths of winter is one of the most pressured times for the health service. It is for any health service in the world. And I'm afraid to say this strike was timed just like the RMT drivers used to try and target big World Cup matches and Christmas shopping season. The BMA's lowered itself to those kind of tactics, which I think is a serious error. I think what this shows a number of things. Firstly, I don't disagree with the analysis that we don't know what the Prime Minister's real gut instinct is. I mean, I think the fact is that he has spent much of his career as a very successful and very, by all accounts, by a lot of accounts, very effective administrator. And I think the fact that he's intervening in this sense, in this sense, it's not a bad thing if that's your job. It is distinct, I think, from being a politician. But the fact he's weighing in suggests that he knows how serious this flu crisis now is and how severe the impact of the strike's going to be. Second, it suggests that he and Wes Streeting have assessed that the BMA is, they're not going to be able to offer something that would satisfy the BMA. So now they have to try and appeal to them not to vote for the strike in the ballot. And third, they've seen the polling, which shows that more voters who support every single major political party in this country oppose the strike rather than support it. So they know that they'll have public backing on this too. I think the BMA's called this extremely badly.
If you look at it from the BMA's point of view, there have been years when they were on a pay freeze and the public supported them, and the public support amounted to nothing. It amounted to no government concession. There have been years when they've been saying the underfunding in the NHS is actually making our jobs unsustainably
now
difficult.
Now there's been 2 years which they've had almost 30% pay rise when the public haven't, and they're asking for more when there isn't enough money.
Well, a couple of things. One is that they still haven't got anywhere near to the amount they would have done if they just had a fair pay increase throughout. 2, they are in part responding to the fact that the NHS, if you have a winter crisis every single year and it always happens and you know exactly why and you never plan for it and it never improves, that is a politician-made crisis. That's not the weather. The universe didn't make that crisis. Politicians made it. And they are saying, and they have always been saying, we are facing a system which you've created. We're trying to sticking plaster it, and we're not happy to do that anymore. Now, the problem is, I think the public would have a lot of sympathy with that, but because, the kind of very recent memory of COVID, as soon as you get to a situation where things look to be getting out of control, especially with airborne respiratory diseases, especially with potentially fatal ones, the point at which complaining about a system made by politicians shades into sabotaging it in the middle of a disaster is, it is a point that even they won't be able to judge.
But very quickly, both of you, what do you think will be the outcome from the vote by members over the weekend as to whether they proceed with the action next week, bearing in mind that they have seemingly lost public support and we have these utterances from the Prime Minister? I mean,
there will obviously come a point that the leadership of the BMA is out of step with its members, just because the leaderships of unions always are more political than the members, unlike leaderships of political parties. But, and doctors, I think if doctors do blink first, it will be because of their sense of public duty and not because they think the corridor's turned against them. I don't think they're trying to run a popularity contest, but I do think they are, many of them, defined by a sense of, saving people above all.
Mark, do you think they will blink first?
I can't pretend to know what's going to happen within the union. I can only hope, like a lot of people around the country who need the NHS to be there for us over Christmas, that they see sense and reason on this and vote against strike action.
Meanwhile, with the Eye, we're seeing that the suggestion is now, the advice that the vaccinations should be given to children. They should be majored on children because they're particularly affected by this particular strain. Zoe?
There's a really good case for vaccinating children. Well, it's threefold, really. One is that they don't react to vaccines. Adults, you give them a flu vaccine and they feel like they have flu, just a very short flu, whereas kids don't react in the same way. You can give them any kind of vaccine and they bounce back within 5 minutes. 2 is, of course, at Christmas there are multi-generational mixing in a way that there isn't necessarily the rest of the year. And 3, they're a captive audience. You know exactly where they are for most of the day until the end of term. So, yeah, I'm not at all surprised to find health chiefs calling for this, because it's probably the best way to turn this into something more serious?
Yeah, and I think the issue here is not that vaccination for children hasn't been available, it's that the uptake has been much lower than they hoped. The fact is there have been school vaccination campaigns running through this term, but much like vaccination campaigns with the wider population, with the elderly, their uptake seems to be low across all of them, and there's quite a bit of confusion as well as concern, I think, in officialdom about exactly why that is. Is this about some degree of what term vaccine fatigue since the pandemic? Alternatively, is it simply that they got the comms campaign wrong? Maybe they didn't start it in the right way or start it early enough. But there is still time for people to get their children vaccinated. But the rates are currently still too low.
I also think the messaging around vaccination is weird because on the one hand, you know, there's a huge public health push, these things work, please all take them. And on the other hand, they are, of course, limited by demographic groups. So you get the message that they're slightly rationed and you shouldn't be greedy and ask for one if you're not eligible. And yet at the same time, your kind of sense of responsibility is that you should be vaccinated. And I think they should just get some kind of whiz in to clarify and streamline that messaging a bit.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of employers who provide vaccines for their workforce, both as a welfare thing, but also because it reduces the amount of time people spend off.
But wouldn't that annoy you if your employer did that? You'd be like, you're just one thing I've got, getting ill before Christmas. You want to take that away from me.
We provide.
Nobody wants to get ill before.
If people who work for us choose to get the flu vaccine, then they pop on expenses and we pay for that. It's kind of it's a mutual benefit. Yeah.
But bearing in mind the context of this discussion, when we turn to the Times. The headline there, half of NHS staff shun the flu jab. So if, you know, NHS staff aren't taking the jabs, it's very likely that the others won't follow. Well,
I think that is particularly troubling. I mean, it does say in this story that the flu vaccine uptake in the NHS was about 3/4 prior to the pandemic, and it's now down at half. Frankly, I think that's a question of... It's a serious concern, obviously, in terms of NHS workforce productivity, people actually being able to be at work, safety of patients also. But yeah, I mean, set a good example. If the patient, if the jabs work, which they do, then the health service at least should be taking them out.
The thing is, two kind of underlying serious things in this story is, one of them is the anti-vaccine sentiment, and you've got to recognise that that is part of a kind of constellation of right-wing narratives that a lot of people are now taking up.
I'm not sure it's just a right. It's definitely there on parts of the right, but it's also there on bonkers parts of the left as well, isn't it?
Not really. No, it is a kind of conspiracist. There's a conspiracist nexus by which anti-vaxxing and actually, no, you're completely right. There is the bit that comes down through the anti-big pharma, anti-corporate.
There's always been the kind of hippie-dumb anti-vax stuff as well.
But there is also a very strong and well-funded network that's coming over from America, which you see with Kennedy, right? You know, of mustering around anti-vaccine sentiment to marshal, distrust of experts, distrust of authority, distrust of politics. And it is quite concerning if a large number of nurses have that as a kind of ideological cornerstone. It doesn't say, it says it's a mixture of vaccine fatigue and anti-vax sentiment, but you know, whatever the proportion is, I think it's too high.
Should we move on to the King's positive news about his cancer diagnosis, that message that he put out on Channel 4 this evening? Mark?
Yes, as you mentioned in your package earlier, a rare intervention of its type from the palace. Undoubtedly good news. And I know a lot of people, a lot of your viewers will have been very well aware of this story and very concerned for the King's well-being. Also, an awful lot of people around the country who have past experience or current experience of family members going through cancer treatment, who know how traumatic a diagnosis like that is, who know how worrying it is for a patient and their loved ones. And it's unalloyed good news to see that, as he says, early diagnosis, he's called for people to take up more screening, following medical advice and innovative treatment is working.
Yes, and echoing that call for people to seek out early diagnosis and take advantage of the screening programme, which he kind of launched in his message.
I'm so impressed by him because he's reached the age that he has obviously hating giving out personal information, doing everything he could to avoid talking about himself on any level that was at all disclosing. And now he's having to address the nation on a subject so serious and so personal. And I think he's doing it pretty well.
The headline, strong to reign over us, just using a little bit of a pun there. But as you say, it is very unusual, and he must have had to sort of fight against every instinct.
Every single thing that he was raised in, you know, the stiff upper lip, the privacy, the kind of, that super English thing of hating talking about health, full stop. I think, you know, he's obviously done it again. Everybody in the news today seems to have a tremendous sense of public duty. It is pure sense of public duty triumphing over his DNA, which I think is pretty impressive.
Yeah, and all the cancer charities just pointing to the benefits for all those cancer sufferers out there, that because he's been so forthcoming and showing support with them, that, you know, they really will not feel that they're alone on their cancer journey.
Yes, and this is something we've talked about a lot in recent years. This is part of the dichotomy of the royal family, in the sense that there's all the pomp and ceremony of the formal constitutional kind of national historic role, but there's also, for the last, since the Queen, the late Queen kind of set this theme back in the 1960s, there's also that question of, actually, they're the royal family, but they're also a family, and identifiably such, much more so than they were 100 years ago. Okay. And that is an opportunity to turn what's obviously been a dreadful experience into something that hopefully will help to save people's lives by seeking screening. Indeed,
indeed. Mark and Zoe, thank you very much for the moment. Coming up, as the economy shrinks by 0.1%, are we on the brink of a recession, as the Telegraph suggests? That and more when we come back. Do stay with us.
I'm Cordelia Lynch, Sky's Asia correspondent, based here in Bangkok.
These slums, once gripped by fear and death.
There is far less bloodshed now, but it hasn't gone away.
Who's asking you to kill?
The police will give me the orders, and after I kill the target, I throw the gun away.
We try our best to uncover and unpick a fast-changing and deeply complex region.
These large waterways provided an excellent source of body disposal.
This is the Buriganga River, where victims who'd allegedly been shot dead were dumped.
Sheikh Hasina, how confident are you that she will stand trial?
She will stand trial, there's no doubt about that.
We're going to take you to the very heart of a criminal network, going undercover inside Southeast Asia's scam centres for the very first time.
We won't have any problems with police, it's okay.
Just seen Imran Khan leave, and as we understand it, he's just been shot in the leg.
They have decided that the only way they'll allow elections is if I'm inside jail or killed.
Sky News get the full story first.
Chinese vessels start encircling the boat we're on, blocking its path.
The Chinese are now deploying water cannons, firing it directly towards our boat. We've discovered doctors across Delhi dishing out pills like this, claiming they will provide a lifelong cure for homosexuality.
Rohingya people fleeing an escalating civil war.
The situation here in Cox's is desperate. An already insecure place does feel a lot more precarious.
I'll tell you on another day on the podcast what that was all about.
Welcome to the world.
Come along for the journey, it'll be fun.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? This is the war game.
There were a number of armed security.
We want to discover, to find out what's really going on.
Everything you need to know about British politics in about 20 minutes. I actually don't like political drama.
So, where next?
Available wherever you get your podcasts.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
of being a Sky News presenter?
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you.
So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think?
It's really unusual.
Mornings with Rich and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Being a Sky News journalist. Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
You are watching the press preview. Still with me, Mark Wallace and Zoe Williams. The way you shuffled your papers there. The head teacher is in talking now. Pay attention. We're going to start with the Financial Times and this story regarding the frozen assets of Russia. The EU freezes 210 billion euros of Russian assets. They've been frozen indefinitely. They're held in the bloc, and Belgium is not very keen on this move, and Moscow's filed a lawsuit against Belgium.
It's the right thing to do. You remember those infamous words a few months ago when Donald Trump said that Ukraine doesn't have any cards? Well, actually, Europe and Ukraine do have some cards, and this is prime among them. The fact is, the vast majority of... to clarify, these aren't Russian oligarchs' assets or anything like that. These are Russian state assets. The vast majority of them globally that have been frozen to some degree or impounded to some degree since the start of the war are on this side of the Atlantic. Some of them in London, a lot of them in Belgium. We can and should use them to, particularly before Trump goes softer on sanctions or tries to strike another deal with Russia, to leverage them to support the Ukrainians. Something the Ukrainians have been campaigning for a long time. I've met officials from Ukraine who have come to the UK to lobby the government about this. The fact is that they are short of money, they're short of weapons which you can buy with money, and they are concerned, as we all are now, about reliance on the United States. So Belgium, I think, should get over its reservations about whether it's quite gentlemanly or not and realise that this is a serious war on the European landmass.
Very strong objections from Belgium, but why?
But I think that part of their objection is if you're going to freeze the assets and take the assets, then freeze the assets and take the assets. But if you just use them as, if you basically borrow against them, you're creating this enormous financial kind of chimera in a way where you're borrowing against it, but you're not explicitly saying you're going to seize it, and therefore you're kicking down the road just a huge, a little bit like the collateralized debt obligations that led up to the financial crash. You're just creating a big pile of debt based on something dodgy.
So I think it's actually the opposite and a bit worse, because the reason why they're looking at these lending against or borrowing against the assets is primarily because Belgium first obstructed, Belgium and Hungary and various more Russia-sympathetic nations in the EU opposed the outright seizure. What would actually be better for Ukraine, which the Ukrainians would like, is for this to be seized, invested at commercial rates, because while it's frozen and you borrow against it, you get less return.
Yeah, I would like that.
But actually what I think the Belgians are worried about, which some people in the UK were worried about, but I understand the UK officials got over quite some time ago, is what does this do to the money from other tyrannies? What does this do to Chinese money or Saudi money, etc.? Will they start worrying, is this a safe place to put our cash? And the fact is, the lesson should be quite clear. These are safe, reliable countries for the rule of law to keep your cash. You won't be treated like a criminal regime unless you act like a criminal regime, so don't.
I mean, but you know, you say that, but it really depends what your definition of acting like a criminal is. Many people would argue that Saudi Arabia regularly acts like a criminal regime, but you would never say it meets the threshold to take to seize its assets. Russia clearly has waged a war of aggression, and I think there will be huge bafflement as to why the EU can't behave aggressively back financially. You know, they might, but they don't. But, you know, of course, one of the reasons is that Russia will retaliate. Taking a lawsuit against Euroclear is only the beginning of the retaliation.
Mark, we've only got about a minute. Let's fit in the Daily Telegraph front page, and economists are suggesting that Rachel Reeves is pushing us towards a recession.
Yes, this is the latest underperformance of the latest set of GDP figures, another month of economic shrinkage. And Some of that will undoubtedly be about the uncertainty, not just the uncertainty from the spin around the budget, but just the budget being so late, why they left it for next month. But a lot of it is not just about confidence, it's about reality. I'm going to say all sorts of parts of the economy out there getting very wobbly in terms of people's willingness to spend, and we should be concerned about that.
Zoe, you've got 10 seconds.
I mean, I have to say, when they announced the date of the budget and said it was so late, I was thinking it's not that late, but it is that late.
Okay. Zoe and Mark, thank you so much for taking us through the papers. Coming up next on Sky News at 11, the King sharing his personal experience with cancer.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Being a Sky News journalist. Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us?
Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office.
Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can